Okay, we are live. All right. Okay, got it. Got it. Okay, we're ready to go. And welcome to the evening Caitanya Caritamrta reading and class, whatever they call it. And we're going to chant first. Here we go. Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Koro More Tuma Bina Ke Dayalu Jagat Samsare Patita Pavana Hetu Tavavatara Musamapati taprabo napaibeya Aha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Suki Kripal Balogan Nakoro Ami Borodu Ayamo Koro Sitapati Advaita Goswami Tava Kripa Bo Lepai Caitanya Netai Aha Swarup Sanatana Rupa Raghunath Mata Yogachi Jiva Rabu Lokanath Jaya Kor Shri Acharya Prabhu Srinivas Ramachandra Sangamage Narotamudas Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Guru More Tumavina Dayalu Samsare Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Koro More Tumamina Ke Dayalu Jagat Samsare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Nitya Gaur Haribo 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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidagacharya, also Tela Sitashi Shimad, His Divine Grace Savaya, Chananala Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nantakoti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Parem Se Go Shri Krishna Caitanya Bharabu Nityananda Sidvaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuram Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Srimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So let's read the translation to this nice prayer written by Caritamrta Thakur. My dear Lord, please be merciful to me, because who could be more merciful than your Lordship within these three worlds? Your incarnation is just to reclaim the conditioned fallen souls, but I assure you that it will not find a more fallen soul than me. Therefore, my claim is first. My dear Lord Nityananda, you are always joyful in spiritual bliss. Since you always appear very happy, I have come to you because I am most unhappy. If you kindly put your glance over me, I may also become happy. My dear Advaita Prabhu, husband of Sita, you are so kind. Please be kind to me. If you are kind to me, naturally, Lord Caitanya and Nityananda will also be kind to me. I pray for the mercy of Swarup Damodar, the six Goswamis, namely Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Sanatana Goswami, Shri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Shri Jiva Goswami, and Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, and Lokanath Prabhu. I, Narottam Das, pray for the merciful Srinivasa Acharya, and I always desire the company of Ramchandra. What a beautiful prayer. So now let's go on with the reading of the Caitanya Charitamrta. So Magana Timiranda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshud and Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my divine spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, let's go to the Caitanya Charitamrta. We're reading, of course, from the 6th chapter of the Antya Lila, the Caitanya Charitamrta, which details Lord Caitanya's dealings with Raghunath Das Goswami and also Raghunath Das Goswami's extreme renunciation. As we read yesterday, two things. The Raghunath Das Goswami for the first few days was taking prasadam left over by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then he stopped doing that, and he was begging at the Singha Dwara gate, the lion gate of the Jagannath temple. And Lord Chaitanya was very pleased because he was taking a very humble position. Srinadapi Sunichena Turari Vasahishna Manida Manadena Kirtanya Sadari. And then he asked Lord Chaitanya through Swarup Damodar Goswami, what are the duties of a sannyasi? What is the objective of life? And Lord Chaitanya replied, specifically about not eating opulent food, wearing fine clothes, and just thinking of Krishna within your heart of hearts all the time. So this is basically where, one other thing happened with yesterday's reading is that Raghunath Das's father and uncle discovered where he was by asking Shivananda Singh, and they got ready to send all sorts of money and men to help Raghunath Das, which Raghunath Das really didn't want to take. But they were going to send it with Shivananda Singh. So let's read about that today. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Okay, beginning today from text 259. Chari Shatamudra Dvi Brija Eka Brahmana Shivanandera Tani Vathaila Tatakshana. Raghunath Das's father immediately sent 400 coins, 2 servants, and 1 brahmana to Shivananda Sen. So this is to go, of course, to Raghunath Das Goswami. Shivananda Kahi Tumi Saba Yaite Nadiba Ami Aika Yabe Amara Sange Yaiba. Shivananda Sen informed them, "You cannot go to Jagannath Puri directly. When I go there, you may accompany me." Evi gara yaha yabiyami sabat chalimu tabe toma sabakare sange lana yamu. Now go home. When all of us go, I shall take all of you with me. So that's when, once a year, Shivananda Sen and all the devotees went to observe the Rath Yatra and to be with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And they stayed for about 4 months. Eta Pashtave Sri Kavi Karnapura Raganatha Mahima Grante Likila Prachura. Describing this incident, the great poet Sri Kavi Karnapura has written extensively about the glorious activities of Raghunath Das in his Sri Chaitanya Chandrodaya Nataka. Okay. Acharya Yadananda Sumadhura Sri Vasudeva Priyas Tatshishyo Raghunatha Jadi Guna Pranadiko Madrisham Sri Chaitanya Kripati Reka Sata Snigda Sarupanugo Vairagyaika Nridir Nakasha Vidido Nilachaletistatam. Raghunath Das is the disciple of Yadananda Acharya. We heard about this before, but this is a quote. Who was very gentle and extremely dear to Vasudeva Das, a resident of Kanchanapalli. Because of Raghunath Das's transcendental qualities, he is always more dear than life for all of us devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Since he has been favored by the abundant mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is always pleasing, vividly providing a superior example for the renounced order. This very dear follower of Swarup Damodar Goswami is the ocean of renunciation, who among the residents of Nilachala, Jagannath Puri, does not know him well. This verse is from Kavi Karnapura's Sri Chaitanya Chandrodaya Nataka. Be great to read that book, 1033. Yaksarvalakaika mano virucha sobhagyavu kachet krishna pacha yatrayam aropanatulya kalam tat prema shukki palavannatulyaha. Because he is very pleasing to all the devotees, Raghunath Das Goswami easily became like the fertile earth of good fortune, in which it was suitable for the seed of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be sown. At the same time that the seed was sown, it grew into a matchless tree of the love of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and produced fruit. This is the next verse from the Sri Chaitanya Chandrodaya Nataka 10.4. Shivananda yache se manushe kahila karnapura se rupe shloka varnina Lila, Varnila. In these verses, the great poet Kavi Karnapura gives the same information that Shivananda Sen conveyed to the messenger from Raghunath Das's father. Okay? Varshanture Shivananda chale Nila chale Raghunathera sevaka vipratanra sange chale. The next year, when Shivananda Sen was going to Jagannath Puri as usual, the servants and the brahmana, who was a cook, went with him. Now we're going to find out what Raghunath Das did with the money, the servants, and the cook. Certainly, he didn't let the cook cook for himself. But we'll hear about this. Sevi prabhacha charis shata mudra lana Ilachare Raganate Milila Asisha. The servants and the Brahmin brought 400 coins to Jagannath Puri, and there they met Raghunath Das. It's a lot of money. Raghunath Das Angikara Nakarila Dravyalana Dvijana Tahani Rahila. Raghunath Das did not accept the money and men sent by his father. Therefore the Brahmin and one of the servants stayed there with the money. Tabi Raghunath Kare Aneka Yatana Mase Dvi Dina Kaila Prabhura Nimantrana. At that time, Raghunath Das began inviting Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu to his house with great attention for 2 days every month. In other words, he was using the money in order to do that. And we're going to hear what happens later on. Dvi nimantrane lage kodiyastapana Ramana Brichatani Karena Eteka Grahada. The cost for these 2 occasions was 640 kautis. That's like conch shell types of things. Therefore, he would take that much from the servant and the brahmana. Emata mimantrana varsha dvi kaila pachi raganatha nimantrana charidila. Raghunath Das continued to invite Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu in this way for 2 years. Wow. But at the end of the 2nd year, he stopped. Masadui Ave Raghunath Nakari Nimantrana Surupe Puchilatabe Sachiranandana. When Raghunath Das neglected to invite Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu for 2 consecutive months, the Lord, the son of Sachi, questioned Swarup Damodar. Raghu Kene Amaya Nimantrana Charidila Surupa Kai Manikichu Vichara Karila. The Lord asked, why has Raghunath Das stopped inviting me? Swarup Damodar replied, he must have reconsidered something in his mind. Vishayira Dravyalana Kari Nimantrana Prasanana Haya Ihaya Jani Prabhura Mana. I invite Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu by accepting goods from materialistic people. I know that the Lord's mind is not satisfied by this. Wow. So in other words, accepting things from materialistic people for your own service. Dangerous. Because it was service to Lord Chaitanya, but still it was his service to Lord Chaitanya. So you have to be really careful. Mora chitta dravya laitena haya nimala e mantrane deki patishta matrapala. My consciousness is impure because I accept all these goods from people who are interested only in pounds, shillings, and pence. Therefore, this kind of invitation I get only some material. By this kind of invitation, I only get some material reputation. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur remarks that people who are into the bodily conception of life are called materialists. If we accept the offerings of such people, place them before the Lord, and invite Vaishnavas to partake of the prasadam, that attempt will gain us only a material reputation, not the actual benefit of service to a pure Vaishnava. One should therefore try to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead by fully surrendering to his lotus feet. If one engages for the service of the Lord whatever money one has honestly earned, that is spiritual service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master, and the Vaishnava. So actually we have to clarify this, because generally, in the temple, we're accepting donations from everybody. Everybody. We don't ask, what is your spiritual situation? And if they don't have a good spiritual situation, we don't say, then don't give anything. No, we accept from everybody. However, that this is really an interesting point. The donations should not come with any implicit or explicit control. Wow. So in the case of Raghunath Das Goswami, his donations, or the money coming from his family, was with implicit control of his family. That's really important. There's implicit control of his family. I mean, if someone had just given him money, as we're going to find out later on, he was given money to develop Radha Kund later on, and he accepted it, and it was by a businessman who was a devotee, but still, he accepted it because there was no implicit explicit control that was based on that money. It was just simply given, and he was able to spend it in the way he wanted, which was to take care of Radha Kund. Of course, that gentleman had been instructed by Narayan Rishi to actually to give it to Raghunath Goswami. There's another story later on about that. But there was no control issue at that point. And it wasn't that it was his service, it was the service of the mission. So there's a little difference, there's a subtle difference. Anyway, so we do accept donations from everybody. But we have to be careful about that implicit control, because it puts you under the jurisdiction when you're accepting something from someone on a regular basis all the time and they maintain you or something like that. That is implicit control. If it was one-off, it would be a different thing. Anyway, it's a subtle point, and each and every case has to be dealt with individually. Uparode Prabhu Mora Manhena Nimantrana Namanile Dukaha Iveka Murka Jana. At my request, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepts the invitations because he knows that a foolish person like me would be unhappy if he did not accept them. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that people who are advanced in learning but attached to material enjoyment, who are puffed up by material possessions, by birth in an elevated aristocratic family or by education, may offer show-bottle devotional service to the deity and also offer prasadam to Vaishnavas. Because of their ignorance, however, they cannot understand that since their minds are materially polluted, neither the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, nor the Vaishnavas accept their offerings. If one accepts money from such materialistic persons who offer food to the deity and Vaishnavas, a pure devotee does not accept it. This causes unhappiness for the materialists because they are fully absorbed in the bodily conceptional life. Therefore, they sometimes turn against the Vaishnavas. Now, Prabhupada gave us the instructions that when the money is used for propagating Krishna consciousness, it gets purified. So if someone gives money for the deities, the purpose of the deities in the Krishna consciousness movement is not just our personal deities. The purpose of the deity worship is to what? Preach, to attract people to Krishna, just like today is Saturday in the United States. And I was sitting out in the temple grounds and watching so many people come to see the deities during the day and take darshan of the deities. And sometimes they gave donations, sometimes they didn't give donations. And whatever, but we didn't request or require any donations from the people, but because they're coming, many of them of course are coming to ask material blessings from Krishna, obviously. But because they're coming and they're appreciating the beauty of Krishna, they're getting closer to Krishna. So there's a little bit of leeway in that particular instruction. Just like there's another injunction, one of the offenses in deity worship is to worship the deities in front of materialists. Yet we do that all the time, every Sunday or, whatever. We have all sorts of people with all sorts of motivations, and probably some people who are eating meat, and probably some people who are doing all sorts of other horrible things, and they come to see the deities. So we take this risk to bring, this is the compassion which overrides the other injunction. That's another point, overrides the other injunction that was made by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, even to attract people to Krishna consciousness, was ready to arrange for meat for the Britishers who came to see Mayapur. So, one has to understand things in context. But in the case of Raghunath Das Goswami, him accepting the money from his parents did not enhance his devotional service, did not bring more people to Krishna consciousness. It actually was a conflict of interest because it was from his parents and he was entertaining Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and there was probably, as you would say, there's no redeeming preaching value to it. Preaching, when you're talking about preaching and reaching out to people, then a lot of things, there's a lot more leniency. I wouldn't say looseness, but a lot more leniency in doing things. But when one's not preaching, then it's a little bit different. And Raghunath Das Goswami was simply using that money to entertain Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which wasn't preaching. It was serving Lord Chaitanya, but it wasn't engaged in preaching. So in preaching, adjustments can be made. Eta vicharya nimantrana chari dila shuni mahaprabhu hase balita lagila. These are good points. Considering all these points, Rup Damodar concluded, he has stopped inviting you. Hearing this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smiled and spoke as follows. Vishayirana kaile malina hayamana malina mana haile nahi krishnera smarana. When one eats food offered by materialistic man, one's mind becomes contaminated, and when the mind is contaminated, one is unable to think of Krishna properly. So, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur suggests that people who are materialistically inclined and sahajas, or so-called Vaishnavas who take everything very casually, are both Vishayas and materialists. Eating food offered by them causes contamination. As a result of such contamination, even a serious devotee becomes like a materialistic man. Wow. What a statement. Even a serious devotee becomes like a materialistic man. There are 6 kinds of association: giving charity, accepting food, offering food, talking confidentially, and inquiring confidentially. One should very carefully avoid associating with both the sahajas, known as Vaishnavas, and the non-Vaishnavas or Avaishnavas. Their association changes the transcendental devotional service of Lord Krishna into sense gratification, and when sense gratification enters the mind of a devotee, he is contaminated. The materialistic person who aspires after sense gratification cannot properly think of Krishna. Really important instructions. Of course, food that is actually cooked or served or whatever by people with improper consciousness, the consciousness goes into the food. Prabhupada gives the example that Grandfather Bhishma and Kripacharya and Dronacharya became contaminated by eating food cooked in the kitchen of Duryodhana's kitchen. Obviously, the cook was not exactly Pukka. You know, if you have Duryodhana as a master, you're going to basically be a really nasty cook. So their minds became contaminated. And so the same thing can happen to us. You know, our devotion can become, because we start thinking of sense gratification. We start thinking of sense gratification, whether it's subtle or gross, then our bhakti diminishes at that particular point. So one has to be very careful. Someone asked the question, couldn't his accepting money and using it for Lord Chaitanya except his parents make spiritual advancement? Yes, that's true, but the overriding principle is his own consciousness, because then it was a subtle control by his parents. So his parents could have given money directly to Lord Chaitanya or whatever. And his parents did support Vaishnavas. They supported Haridas Thakur, but that support of Raghunath Das Goswami was tinged with control. It was tinged with bodily consciousness, tinged with control. So it's a consciousness. You know, otherwise they could have given money for spreading the Krishna conscious movement. It wouldn't have been a problem. Or they could have given money to Haridas Thakur, and that wouldn't have been a problem. But because of the bodily connection, it actually entails some subtle control or attachment that occurs in the mind of someone who is receiving money on a regular basis from materialist. Vishayirana hayarajasa nimantrana datapokta dunhara malina hayamana. When one accepts an invitation from a person contaminated by the material mode of passion, the person who offers the food and the person who accepts it are both mentally contaminated. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that there are 3 varieties of invitations: those in the mode of goodness, those in passion, and those in ignorance. An invitation accepted from a pure devotee is in the mode of goodness. An invitation accepted from a person who is pious, attached, is in the mode of passion. An invitation accepted from a person who is materially very sinful is in the mode of ignorance. That reminds me of a story from the Chaitanya Bhagavat. When Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, that story is also told to a certain extent in the Chaitanya Caritamrta, when Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were going to see Advaita Acharya. Lord Chaitanya was specifically angry with the Dvaitacharya because the Dvaitacharya had been teaching a bogus philosophy of Yoga Vasishta. And he was teaching a bogus philosophy in order to get Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu angry with him so he could be chastised by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he had some motivation. He wanted to take a subservient position to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So anyway, so he was teaching this bogus philosophy. And on the way to see Advaitacharya, you had Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda stop in the house of a person who was married, but he was considered a sannyasi, grahasta sannyasi or something like that, but he was a shakta. That means he wasn't a devotee. And Lord Chaitanya didn't know that he was a shakta. Shakta means worshipping the energy of the Lord, and maybe sometimes also worshipping God, but worshipping primarily the energy of our Lord. And shaktas do all sorts of things, like eat meat and take intoxication sometimes. So Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda stopped at his house, and they were taking their meal. He was a Brahmin, so they were taking their meal, but he was a Shakta Brahmin. So anyway, so they were taking their meal, and then after the meal, this gentleman asked Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda, "Would you like some happiness?" And Lord Chaitanya, being a very innocent chap, he didn't know what the man meant by happiness. So he said to Lord Nityananda, "What does he mean by happiness?" And Lord Nityananda said, liquor, alcohol. And Lord Chaitanya got so upset that he had eaten in that house that he immediately, without changing his clothes or putting a gumshoe or whatever, he jumped into the Ganges. He and Lord Nityananda practically swam all the way to Shantipur from there. So sometimes there's these junctions that you see a materialistic person or whatever, you're supposed to jump into the Ganges without even bothering to take your clothes or put a swimsuit on or something like that. So that's really interesting. Of course, we can't do that. We can't carry around a spray bottle of Ganges water and spray ourselves each time we see a materialistic person, or else we'd be spraying ourselves, spritzing ourselves all day long, which would not be practical insofar as our devotional service is concerned. Okay, so we have to be very careful about our association. Very, 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 very careful, because even the mind of a very advanced devotee can be just dragged down to the mode of passion or ignorance. It can happen like that. So you may think, oh, I can go to the restaurant, I can go to McDonald's and order a salad or a veggie burger now they have. No. Your mind will become contaminated. Guaranteedissimo. It's going to become contaminated. Suenhara sankochayami etadina nila balahaila janiapani charidila. Because of Raghunath Das's eagerness, I accepted his invitation for many days. It is very good that Raghunath Das, knowing this, has now automatically given up this practice. Katadine Raghunath Singadwara Chadila Chatreyai Magya Kaite Aramba Kadila. After some days, Raghunath Das gave up standing near the Singadwara gate. Actually, Dwara means gate. And instead began eating by begging alms from a booth for free distribution of food. Govinda Pasha Shuni Pravo Puchena Surupere Raghu Bhiksha Lagitara Kena Nahi Singadware. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard this news from Govinda, he inquired from Sarup Damodar, "Why does Raghunath Das no longer stand at the Singadwara gate to beg alms?" Sarupa Kahi Singadwara Duka Anupavya Chatre Magi Kaya Madhyana Kalegia. Sarup Damodar replied, Raghunath Das felt unhappy standing at the Singadwara gate. Therefore, he is now going at midday to beg alms from the charity booth. Prabhu Kahe Mala Kaila Charila Singadwara Singadwari Vikshavriti Vishara Achara. Hearing this news, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "He has done very well by no longer standing at the Singadwara gate. Such begging of alms resembles the behavior of a prostitute." Not that it's wrong to beg alms. We are not criticizing criticizing, or Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is not criticizing. It's wrong to beg alms. But when you do this begging, you start to discriminate between people who would give and people who would not give. And there's, again, a tendency to be controlled. You're no longer equal. Some of these people may be materialists, and you're also depending on materialists. And there's implicit control when you accept something for yourself from someone. That always happens. And we see this sometimes when people are collecting for some big program at the temple or something like that, and then the person who's donating somehow starts to exert control over the devotees. And ultimately, like a pin enters like a pin, it comes out like a plow. Ultimately, you find people just becoming contaminated by that association. One has to be very, very, very careful. So one has to be ready to bless everybody, approach everyone equally, regardless of whether they give or they don't give. Tatag hi kemartamayam agachati ayam dashati anena tatamayam aparasamejayam dashati anenapi nadatam anya sameshati sadashati ichadi. Here is a person coming near. He will give me something. In other words, this is the consciousness when you're begging. This person gave me something last night. Now another person is coming near. He may give me something. The person who just passed did not give me anything. In other words, you think negatively. He didn't give me anything. So in other words, your whole manner of being equal poised towards everybody becomes destroyed. But another person will come and he will give me something. And so you're thinking about yourself. You're thinking about yourself. And you're seeing people in relationship to whether they give you something. And that's the same thing with the Father. That you would actually develop affection for someone, materialistic affection for someone, because of that exchange. So that's quite dangerous for a person in the renounced order of life. Thus, a person in the renounced order gives up his neutrality and depends on the charity of this person or that. Thinking in this way, he adopts the occupation of a prostitute. Chatre. So this is only for those in the renounced order of life. Remember that. Chatreya yata lava udara barana anya kata nahi suke Krishna sankirtana. If one goes to the booth where free food is distributed and fills his belly with whatever he obtains, there's no chance of any further unwanted talk, and one can very peacefully chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Etabali tanri puna prasada karila govardhanera shila gunjamala tanre dila. Now this is ecstatic. This is one of the most ecstatic verses. After saying this, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu again bestowed his mercy upon Raghunath Das by giving him a small stone, from Govardhan Hill, and a garland of small conch shells. Actually, it's actually gunjamala, which are these reddish beads. That's mentioned here. Gunjamala. They're actually, I don't know if they're actually conch shells, but they're like beads. They're seeds, actually. Shankarananda Saraswati Vrindhavana Haite Haila Tena Se Shila Gunjamala Lana Gela. Previously, when Shankarananda Saraswati had returned from Vrindavan, he brought the stone from Govardhan Hill and also the garland of conch shells. That's the Gunjamala. Harshve Ganta Gunjamala Govardhana Shila Dvivastu Mahaprabhura Agayani Dila. He presented Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu with these two items, the garland of conch shells, that's Gunjamala, and the stone from Govardhan Hill. Dviyapurvavastu Panaprabhu Dushtahadla Smaranera Kale Gale Pare Gunjamala. Upon receiving these two uncommon items, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was extremely happy. While chanting, he would put the garland around his neck. So this garland represents Radharani. Govardhana Shila Prabhu Hridaye Netradare Kavu Nasaya Granalaya Kavu Shire Kare The Lord would put the stone to his heart or sometimes to his eyes. Sometimes he would smell it with his nose and sometimes place it on his head. Now, it's not to say that we should do that with the Shilas. That's Krishna. Krishna. We are not Krishna. Netra jale se shila bija nirantara shila rekahina prabhu Krishna kalevara. The stone from Govardhan was always moist with tears from his eyes. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu would say, this stone is directly the body of Lord Krishna. E matatina vatsara shilamala darila tushtana shilamala raganate tila. For 3 years he kept the stone in garland. Then, greatly satisfied by the behavior of Raghunath Das, the Lord delivered both of them to him. Prabhu kahe e shila krishnara vigraha in hara seva kara tumi karya agraha. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Raghunath Das, the stone is the transcendental form of Lord Krishna. Wow, Govardhan Shila ki jai. Worship the stone with great eagerness. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhasha that in the opinion of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Govardhan Shila, the stone from Govardhan Hill, was directly the form of Krishna, the son of Maharaj Nanda. The Lord used the stone for 3 years, and then in the heart of Raghunath Das, the Lord awakened devotional service to the stone. The Lord then gave the stone to Raghunath Das, accepting him as one of his most confidential servants. However, some envious people conclude that because Raghunath Das had not taken birth in the family of a Brahmin, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not give him the right to worship the deity directly, but instead gave him a stone from Govardhan. This kind of thought is not a key or hellish. As stated in the Padma Purana, Archi Vishnu Shiladir, Kurushu Naramatir Vaishnave Jati Buddhi Yashava Naraki Saha. If one thinks that the worshipable Shalagram Shila is a mere stone, that the spiritual master is an ordinary human being, or that a pure Vaishnava preaching the bhakti cult all over the world is a member of a particular caste or material division of society, he is considered a Naraki, a candidate for hellish life. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed that the Govardhan Shila, the stone from Govardhan, is non-different from the body of Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he indirectly advised such foolish persons that one should not be envious of a Vaishnava who belongs to a different caste or sect. One should accept a Vaishnava as transcendental. In this way, one can be saved, otherwise one is surely awaiting a hellish life. Now, the point about worshiping a Govardhan Shila is that the worship of the Govardhan Shila is on the Raganuga platform. It's actually a higher level of worship than worshiping a Shalagram Shila. Shalagram Shila worship, I mean, it's wonderful, and the Goswamis also worship Shalagram Shilas, but the Shalagram Shila worship is generally on the Vaidhi platform, and the Govardhan Shila worship is on the Raganuga platform. Raganuga means spontaneous devotional service, so he's actually indicating that Raghunath Das Goswami was on the highest level of devotional service. E Shilara Karatumi Satvika Pujana Achirat Pavitumi Krishna Prema Dana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, worship this stone in the mode of goodness like a perfect Brahmana, for by such worship you will surely attain ecstatic love of Krishna without delay. Wow. Eka Kunja Jala Aratulasi Manjari Satvika Seva He Shuddha Bhave Kari. For such worship, one needs a jug of water and a few flowers from a tulsi tree. This is worship in complete goodness when performed in complete purity. Dvidike Dvipatra Maje Komala Manjare E Mata Ashta Manjari Dive Sharakare. With faith and love, you should offer 8 soft tulsi flowers, each with 2 tulsi leaves. 1 on each side of each flower. So that's what we try to do if there's enough tulsi flowers. But at least 1. Shihaste Shiladiya Eyagya Dila Anandi Raganatha Seva Katite Lagila. After this advising him how to worship Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally offered Raghunath Das the Govardhan Shila with his transcendental hand, As advised by the Lord, Raghunath Das worshipped the Shila in great transcendental jubilation. Wow. Actually, no one should take Shilas from Govardhan without permission of a Brajavasi. Eka pitasti drivastra pindeka kani swarupa dilena kunja anivara pani. Swarup Damodar gave Raghunath Das 2 cloths, each about 6 inches long, a wooden platform, and a jug of water, a jug in which to keep water. Hemato Raghunath Kanena Pujana Pujakale Deki Shilaya Rajendra Nandana. Thus Raghunath Das began worshipping the stone from Govardhan, and as he worshipped, he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, directly in the stone. Wow. Prabhura Swahasta Data Govardhana Shila Echinti Raganatha Preme Vasi Gela. Thinking of how he had received the Govardhan Shila directly from the hands of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, Raghunath Das was always overflooded with ecstatic love. Wow. Jala tulasira sevaya tanrayata sukho deha shudasho pachara pujaya tata sukhanaya. The amount of transcendental bliss that Raghunath Das enjoyed simply by offering water and tulsi is impossible to achieve even if one worships the deity with 16 kinds of paraphernalia. Wow. Ematakata dina kadena pujana tavi swarupa goshani tanre kahila vachana. After Raghunath Das had thus worshipped the Govardhan Shila for some time, Swarup Damodar one day spoke to him as follows. Okay. All right, we'll just do this 1 or 2 verses. Ashta kodira kaja sandesha kara samarpana shradakari dile say amritera sama. Offer the Govardhan stone 8 qualities worth of first-class sweetmeats known as kaja and sandesh. If you offer them with faith and love, they will be just like nectar. Tabayasta kodira kaje kare samarpana sarupa gyaya govindata kare samadana. Raghunath Das then began offering the costly sweetmeats known as kaja, which Govinda, following the order of Swarup Damodar, would supply. So that ends. So we did 200 and 259 to 305 today. Very nice. Okay, so we're going to stop sharing, and we're going to, let's see, allow some of you lucky souls to unmute yourselves. And then it's time for questions. You can type in the text window, or you can raise your hand. Okay, Rakesh, you're first.
Yeah, please accept my humble obeisances.
Haribo.
Thank you. Gurudev, you talked about the eating of food, which changes our consciousness. What
Yes.
about temple? Many people come and they cook the food. So does that food also, and offer to the Lord later on, but is that food also affect our consciousness? Or
Well, hopefully they have good consciousness. If they're cooking for the Lord with the right consciousness, then it will help our consciousness. And if the offering is done with love and devotion, Krishna the Gita says that one should offer him with patram pushpam pulam toyam yome bhakta priyachati. I should offer him with love and devotion, then it will make our consciousness better. Because we shouldn't try to criticize Vaishnavas. I'm not going to eat what you cook because your consciousness is hell. So, anyway, it's offered with love and devotion. The problem is that sometimes people use too much salt or too much oil, and it may not affect your consciousness in terms of Krishna consciousness, but it's going to affect your body, so you're going to get liver disease or some other nice disease like that. So I'd be more careful about that than I would be about consciousness when I go to a Hare Krishna temple. Okay, so Madhava.
So Dandvat Guru Maharaj. So I have first one question, which is regarding when you were describing that story when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Nityananda Prabhu, they were visiting to Santipur to Advaita Acharya, and during that journey, and this Sakta, and this guy, of course, maybe, but they got upset by when the person asked about giving some some alcohol or no. So once they Prabhu and Nityanand Prabhu knew, they left immediately, jumped into Ganges and all these things they did. So my question is, although Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityanand Prabhu, they are Krishna and Balaram, the same. So the question does not arise anything about them. But then when we hear the story of Ajamil, and it talks about the best way to atone is to chant Hare Krishna rather than Vedic mantras and all that. So I'm kind of, I want to understand, so why they have to, they're God themselves. So first of all, they didn't have to do any atonement. And secondly, although Krishna has also done by killing the bull, the demon bull, and then he had to dig, by request of gopis, he has to dig Samakunda Junction, and all the pure water was invited there. They asked him to take bath. So of course Krishna did it, he didn't have to do it. That story is there. But these days, again, when Ajamil is asked to atone, the best way to chant Hare Krishna, and they propagated this mission, this very principle, then how do we understand this? That's my first question.
Well, you're absolutely right. The best way to is atone, and bathing in the Ganges actually is secondary to chanting the Lord's holy names. Of course, it is purifying, and it can help you get rid of the impurities that you may have had from eating food cooked by non-devotees. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he wanted to do something external to really make the message stronger. Had he just chanted, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, that would not have been such a strong message for us. So Lord Chaitanya is teaching us by example. And so his jumping in the Ganges, and it was also the culturally accepted things. Try to understand, Lord Chaitanya was also preaching to people in a particular culture. And so the culturally accepted thing to do is, when you get some impurity, is to jump in the Ganges or use Ganges water. Actually, Srila Prabhupada's sister, Bhishma, would always carry around some Ganges water or some Jamuna water in a little spray bottle and be spraying everybody with it, which is actually really interesting, really funny. So, it does work, it does purify you, but I think Lord Chaitanya wanted to give a stronger message, and that's why he jumped in the Ganges rather than just chanted. And as far as, Lord Krishna bathing in Radha Kund, Lord Krishna was not teaching the gopis about Nama Kirtan. At that time, the idea, even Nanda Maharaj at one time, even though he's the father of Krishna, wanted to go to the Ganges, and Krishna forbade him to do that. And what happened is that Krishna showed Nanda Maharaj that the Manasa Ganga was a manifestation of the Ganges. So there's a particularly cultural thing to make an impression. And obviously Nama Sankirtan is much more powerful than bathing in the Ganges or repeated, even than repeated austerities. You can't even compare the two. Okay, good question. And we have...
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So the other question you were describing, we are hearing that we know Bhishma Deva. Of course, I know so much that he was really a pure devotee of Lord Krishna. He knew all this time, when a lot of anarchy was going, who Krishna is. And so there's no doubt about this. But again, when he was eating actually from Duryodhana, then obviously, and he was working for Duryodhana until the very end, he left his life. So how could he maintain? He tolerated Draupadi's disgraceful activity performed on her. So all these bad things, and how could he still maintain the status of Mahajan? will be questionable. How could he maintain that? Mahajan, leader.
I would say it is a pastime to show us like Lord Brahma has some pastimes too, to show us how potent or the contamination will be from improper association. I mean, I would say it's it's obviously a pastime. He's a Mahajan. He's a great pure devotee. He's absorbed in the relationship with Krishna, where he's appreciating Krishna rushing at him with the chariot wheel to kill him. He's enjoying Ras. So in one sense, you could say it's his Ras too, from another angle of vision. But Prabhupada did say his mind became contaminated. So it's pastime. That's
Thank
all.
you, Maharaj. Dandavat. Thank you.
Okay, so two other quick questions. Amrita Karan, you have a question? You have to unmute yourself if you're going to ask a question.
Please accept my humble obeisances, Guru Maharaj. Lot
Haribo.
of speed. Actually, when we are going outside for preaching, mostly we are staying in temple or sometimes in some Grihastha devotee's house. Then sometimes other Grihasthas also inviting us. The other Grihasthas also inviting us to have lunch or something like that. Then it's like they are also devotee, but it's a contamination is there if we'll go like that, except
That's right. That's why one should not eat at the same house for more than 3 days. That's a sannyasi regulation.
thank you. And other thing that I heard today from maybe Prabhupada lecture that he mentioned that Durjadhana and actually Bhishmadev actually got the food from Durjadhana house. So his mind is still like, no, he is a Mahajan, but still he is in the side of Durjadhana when he's fighting with Pandavas, because he is taking food from the house of Durjadhana.
Well, he fought on the wrong side. He actually favored the Pandavas, but his sense of judgment became skewed or altered. He took his promise as more important than morality, and he admits that in the Shanti Parv of the Mahabharata. He actually admits that his judgment was wrong, and his judgment became contaminated. He actually always favored the Pandavas, but his judgment, his sense of what was right, what's called an ethical or moral judgment, became affected. Okay?
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Thank you.
Okay, one more question from Shipra.
Dhanavad Pranam Maharaj. I'm Suchandra Das from New Zealand.
Good to
Suchandra. Yeah, Maharaj, it is almost the same type of question. We are going for preaching few houses, but they are doing Japamala 16 rounds, and slowly they are inclined to this Krishna consciousness. And they offer us with very Shraddha, Bhakti to accept food in their house. So should I accept or not? Because they are very good people and coming slowly.
We're doing this for preaching, for encouraging people. I mean, I had one instance. I was cultivating a college student here, and I asked him, he was a gentleman, and he became a devotee later on. I said, he was a vegetarian. I said, please cook some spaghetti and bring it to the temple for me. And he did that, and that helped develop a nice, loving relationship. So for preaching, there are other considerations. There's actually a lot more leniency when one is preaching Krishna consciousness than when one is just a Babaji like Raghunath Das Goswami. So we don't follow exactly the same pattern because we're preaching, we're bringing people to Krishna consciousness. We show that we worship the deities in front of people who are not devotees, sometimes in front of meat eaters. We have Rath Yatra in front of meat eaters. And fish, in Jagannath Puri, just about everybody eats fish. And then We have Rath Yatra in front of them.
Yes,
Uh,
Maharaj. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So just one more text question and then we have to end. Recently asked by a very new to Krishna conscious basis, they understand loving and respecting Guru, but seeing them as different than a regular human being, they have a hard time with that. So what should you say? They should see their devotional mood. I mean, there's a human side to the Guru, but then uh, there's a human side that's true, and that's whatever, just human with his likes and dislikes. But there's a transcendental side where his devotion, you should see the devotion like that. Okay, yes, Gopal. The answer is yes. Okay. See everybody tomorrow, same time, same